Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. This week we join the Doctor, and the Doctor, along with Joe and the boys from Unit, in the first story of Season 10, The Three Doctors. We'll be discussing the Doctors, the companions, and the villains, and give your thoughts on the story as a whole.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this story, so in order to join the discussion, you can check us out at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteam@teamproductions.com. But before we start, though, I must apologise to one of our friends of the show and long-time listener, Paul, from the Half Measures podcast, who apparently nearly died listening to last week's episode.
Time Traveling Team claims no responsibility whatsoever for accidents that may happen while listening to the podcast. That's Paul's own fault.
Yeah. No, but when I got to the thing where I was describing the Tom Tit machine, apparently he laughed and nearly slipped on the road.
Yeah, he told me about this. We claim zero responsibility for any accidents that may occur while you're listening to the podcast.
Oh, cool. So, though, on to the story recap. Episode 1. At Minsbridge Wildlife Sanctuary, one of the wardens comes across a trapped weather balloon with a strange orange box attached to it. The box has the name of a Dr. Tyler written on it, and the warden has his wife call the owner to retrieve it whilst he keeps an eye on it. Later, as Dr. Tyler is making his way to the landing spot, the warden, whose name is Alice, vanishes in a flash of light when he gets too near the box. Tyler calls out for him, having seen him as he approached, but when he hears no response, he calls through to Unit. Later at the Doctor's lab at Unit HQ, Tyler explains what he saw to the Doctor and the Brigadier, who say that they will help. Joe asks what the box is for, and Tyler says that it is for research into cosmic rays. Tyler tells him that he had intended to contact Unit anyway due to the strange readings that they had been receiving. He shows them readouts and says that something was detected travelling faster than light and seems to be on a direct course for Earth. The Doctor tells Tyler to develop the latest readings from the box whilst he and Joe go to where Alice disappeared. Tyler gets to work, leaving the Brigadier bemused that he seems to feel at home in a top-secret location. When he develops the image plates from the box, though, he notices what appears to be a face in the image. He goes to open the box fully, but he too disappears into a flash of light. A strange multicoloured translucent blob then appears from out of the box and makes its way out of the lab. At the Wildlife Sanctuary, Joe and the Doctor examine the area that the balloon landed in and are a bit taken aback by the attitude of Mrs. Alice, who says that her husband is prone to being gone for long stretches of time. After she goes, the Doctor confides to Joe that the disappearance is more important than he let on. Meanwhile, the Brigadier returns to the lab but finds Tyler missing and orders Benton to have the base searched. The Doctor and Joe arrive back to go and meet Tyler, but the strange blob suddenly appears from a drain and the Doctor tells Joe to stay away from it. The blob begins to grow in size, and the Doctor tells her to run as the blob causes Bessie to disappear as well. They then make their way to the lab, where Benton is reporting the flash from Bessie's disappearance to the Brigadier, as well as the fact that no one can find Tyler. The Doctor tells Benton to organise men to guard all the drains in the base, and he examines the image that Tyler left out. He reveals to Joe and the Brigadier that the image is of Alice. The Brigadier tells him about coming back to find Tyler missing and the box open. The Doctor uses an instrument that he had used at the Wildlife Sanctuary to scan the area, and the device acts like a Geiger counter, and he tells the Brigadier to continue his story. The Brigadier says that he was bringing in reports from other global deep space research installations, and they all report the same thing, that the entity coming towards Earth scanned it and now it seems to be making its way towards the base. They tell him about the blob that they saw outside, and Joe says that it seems to be hunting specifically for the Doctor. The Doctor agrees, saying Alice's disappearance was an accident, whilst Tyler's disappearance in the lab and Bessie's disappearance was due to their connection to him. The Brigadier asks how they can find it, but the Doctor says that they can only wait for it to find them. Outside, several strange, bulbous clawed creatures appear from thin air and begin to approach the HQ. Benton organises the defence of the base, but the creatures don't seem to be affected by the unit's troops' weapons. The Brigadier orders a complete evacuation and tells Benton to meet him in his office. The Doctor asks Joe to leave for her own safety, saying that the blob won't come for her, but she refuses. Benton climbs in through the lab window and the Doctor tells him to take Joe away, but before he can do anything, the blob suddenly appears, forcing them into the TARDIS. Benton is astounded by what he sees, but says it seems pretty redundant to comment on the change in size from the outside. The Doctor tries to take off, but the power console won't activate, and so he reluctantly sends an SOS to the Time Lords. The Doctor turns on the view screen to keep watching the blob as it wreaks havoc in the lab. On the Time Lord home planet, the President and the Chancellor are shown that the blob is connected to a black hole via an energy beam of some type. The President says that they are dealing with a foe equal to them and it exists within a universe of antimatter. The Chancellor says they need to send help to the Doctor, but the President says that he can spare no one as everyone is needed to combat the energy drain by the black hole. Instead, the President says he would have to break the first law of time and take a previous version of the Doctor out of his time stream to help his current self. Back in the TARDIS, the console activates but nothing happens. As the Doctor goes to check it, he spots a recorder on top of it. Suddenly, his previous incarnation appears and takes it off him. He comments on his dislike for the changes that his current self has made to the console room before turning his attention to the view screen which shows the blob outside. Benton enthusiastically greets the other Doctor and they reminisce about the invasion of the Cybermen. Jo asks the current Doctor who he is, which causes the two Doctors to argue as to which of them is the Doctor. Benton confirms that they are in fact the same person, and the second Doctor explains how he is there. The current Doctor is less than pleased, but their attention is drawn to the view screen when they hear the sounds of gunfire as the Brigadier and his men try to drive off the blob, but to no avail. The two Doctors decide to share a mental link so as to bring the second version up to speed. He then plays his recorder as he contemplates the information he received, which only serves to annoy his current self, and they begin to bicker. Their arguing is monitored by the Time Lord President, who decides to rein them in by using the last reserves of temporal energy available to send back the earliest version of the Doctor. However, he is not able to fully materialize and is trapped in a time eddy in the time vortex. He appears on the view screen and cuts into the argument, expressing his displeasure at his future selves, whom he refers to as a dandy and a clown. He informs them that the blob outside is actually a time bridge and says that they will need to cross it to find its source. He suddenly fades from sight again, and the second Doctor flips a coin to decide which of them will go, with the third Doctor losing the toss. He goes outside, but Jo follows him, and before he can send her back inside, the blob causes them both to disappear. Episode 2. The second Doctor calls Benton back in as he tries to go outside to rescue the third Doctor and Jo. He tells the anxious sergeant that whoever is after his future self won't merely want to kill him, and so he and Jo have most likely been transported somewhere. They take a look at the external view screen and they see the blob has become much more passive. Benton says this is their chance to destroy it, but the second Doctor says that they should try a more subtle approach, and he leads Benton out of the TARDIS. The Brigadier arrives, but the second Doctor tells him to stay back as the blob reacts to whenever they get too close to it. The Brigadier is astounded to see the earlier version of the Doctor, and flutteredly states that the Doctor's tampering with the TARDIS has clearly sent Jo somewhere as well as reverted his appearance. He ignores Benton's interruptions to confirm the second Doctor's story, and tells the second Doctor to bring Jo back and to find a way to contain the blob. He suggests contacting the Time Lords for help, but the second Doctor says that they are preoccupied and it is up to him and his other selves to solve the problem. Meanwhile, on the Time Lord home planet, the Chancellor orders the energy transfer to the Doctor's time stream to be diverted back to combating the black hole, but the President refuses, saying that the Doctor is the only one who can help them. He reveals that the third Doctor has been transported into the black hole, and the Chancellor says that they are more than likely dead. The third Doctor and Jo wake up in a stony valley, and he assures her that they are not dead. He suggests that they look around and they head off down the valley, unaware that they are being observed by one of the bulbous creatures. As they make their way through the valley, they come across bits and pieces from the lab and its equipment that the blob transported away. They also see Bessie and drive further into the valley and stop when they notice a pair of footprints on the ground. They exit Bessie to see where they lead to, and after they go, Alice appears from behind a rocky outcrop. Back in the Doctor's lab, the second Doctor explains to the Brigadier that his other self and Jo are in a universe made of antimatter. The Brigadier says that he thought that matter and antimatter couldn't exist in the same space, and the second Doctor confirms it and says that whoever sent the blob is a highly intelligent foe. The Brigadier then leaves to contact Unit Supreme HQ in Geneva, and Benton apologizes for his attitude, saying that the stress must be getting to him. The second Doctor then says that they need to keep the blob distracted and looks for a television set. The Brigadier returns and says that the World Security Council is waiting for an update on the situation from the third Doctor. The second Doctor asks if it will be confusing for them to see him, and the Brigadier says that he has told him that he is the third Doctor's assistant. The second Doctor is appalled at the idea, but the Brigadier says the truth would be too confusing and tells him to follow him. The second Doctor says that they haven't tested the containment device he has just created, and the Brigadier orders Benton to keep an eye on the blob for the time being. The second Doctor tells him how to use the containment device, and after they leave, the blob starts to advance on Benton, who uses the containment device but to no avail. He anxiously calls for the second Doctor to come back, and he runs back in with the Brigadier. He tells him the containment device didn't work, and the second Doctor tells him to get into the TARDIS. Like Benton, the Brigadier is amazed at the interior of the TARDIS and assumes it to be an illusion built with unit funds. Before the second doctor can explain, he is informed by Benton of the blob's actions in the lab, but he says that all they can do is wait and think what to do next. The Brigadier, growing increasingly frustrated with the events, demands to be let out, but he is ignored by the second doctor, who realizes that the machine didn't work because he forgot that the blob is made of antimatter and therefore gained power from it instead of being subdued by it. The second doctor asks for his recorder, and the Brigadier snaps that he needs to be with his men and not looking for an instrument. The second doctor says that the Brigadier would never make it out of the lab alive and says he needs to think, and music helps him think best, so he goes back to looking for his recorder. The Brigadier then tries to radio out for an update, but the second doctor says that it won't work due to the TARDIS's protective force field. He then takes the radio and starts tinkering with it to boost the signal. Benton also agrees that they are wasting time, but the second doctor says that he needn't worry about the others, as he enviously states that they are having a more interesting time. Back in the antimatter universe, the third doctor and Joe come across Tyler as he is working out how he got there. The third doctor tells him about the nature of their present location, and they both explain to a confused Joe how it should be impossible to be there. Unbeknownst to them, they are being observed through a view screen by an armoured figure, delighted to have a Time Lord within his grasp, and he orders one of the bulbous creatures to bring them to him. It and several others surround the trio and escort them to an underground structure. Tyler says that they should try and make a break for it, but the third doctor says that the only way to get back to their own world is to meet the person who brought them through the antimatter universe in the first place. Tyler tries to convince Jo to go with him, but says that she will stay with the third doctor. Tyler says that he will follow the third doctor's lead, but it is a ruse and he dashes away, pursued by a pair of the bulbous creatures. The third doctor and Jo ponder the situation, and Jo wonders if the third doctor is right about whether or not their abductor will try to kill them. The third doctor says that their captor is a very intelligent creature, and it therefore cannot possibly be cruel. Tyler is suddenly thrown back into them, and he resigns himself to being a prisoner. They are led down a tunnel, and the third doctor explains that they have been converted into antimatter, hence their existence, but Tyler remains dubious as they are led towards their captor. Meanwhile, the second doctor's efforts prove successful, and the Brigadier is able to contact one of his men, who informs him that the bulbous creatures are currently stationary outside the HQ. The Brigadier orders him and the rest of his men to maintain a safe distance from the base. Benton then draws their attention to the view screen, where the first doctor appears again. He tells them that the Time Lords are growing weaker and that he and the third doctor need to act fast. He tells the second doctor to shut off the protective force field, and after some initial confusion, the second doctor agrees as the first doctor fades back into the time vortex, leaving the Brigadier to ask who that was, but is told that he wouldn't believe the answer. Despite the Brigadier and Benton's protest, the second doctor turns off the force field, and the entire HQ, as well as the bulbous creatures, suddenly vanish, leaving the unit troops outside stunned. Episode 3. The third doctor, Jo, and Tyler are brought into an ornate chamber where they meet the armoured figure who introduces himself as Omega, one of the legendary founders of Time Lord civilization. The third doctor is stunned by this, as he and his people believed Omega was destroyed millennia ago. Omega tells the creatures to take Jo and Tyler away, and they are placed inside a cell, the entrance of which disappears after they go inside it. Omega tells the third doctor that without his contributions, then the Time Lords would not have mastered time travel, but he was abandoned by them inside the antimatter universe. The third doctor tells him that he was recorded as lost and is considered a hero on their home planet, but Omega insists that he was betrayed and mocks the doctor's hero worship, claiming that he should be revered as a god instead. The third doctor asks how he survived, and Omega says that he did it through sheer willpower, which is also how he gained mastery of the antimatter lifeforms that attacked the unit base. The third doctor asks what he is needed for, and Omega says that he needs his help to finish off the Time Lords once and for all. He tells him that if he refuses, then he will destroy him as well as Jo and Tyler. An alert comes true, and Omega orders the bulbous creatures to investigate the new arrivals. In the TARDIS, the Brigadier demands to be let out, and the second doctor reluctantly lets them out. The Brigadier goes to take a look around, and when he opens one of the exit doors, he is greeted to the sight of the antimatter planet. He storms back to the lab and begins to berate the second doctor for transporting the base away, as it could be seen as an invasion of whatever country they are in, leading to an international repercussion. Benton tries to break it to him that they have been transported to another universe, but he brushes the claim off. He tells him to wait there whilst he goes to find a local phone to contact the authorities to alert them to their presence there. The second doctor is incredulous at his attitude, and Benton resignedly says that they had better follow him. The second doctor tries to go back for his recorder, but a pair of the bulbous creatures suddenly appear and corner him and Benton. Meanwhile, as the Brigadier is searching the area for a phone, he encounters Alice, who tells him about seeing the third doctor and Jo being captured along with Tyler. Before he can give the Brigadier any more information, they are forced to take cover as the bulbous creatures lead the second Doctor and Benton into Omega's base. Honest asks what they should do, and the Brigadier tells him that they will need to reconnoiter the area before attempting a rescue. Inside Omega's chamber, the third Doctor begs him to stop his plan and reverse the energy flow before the universe is destroyed. He says that he could reclaim his place on the Time Lord High Council, but Omega says that he only seeks absolute power now. The second Doctor and Benton are brought into the chamber, and the third Doctor claims that they are just innocent bystanders. However, Omega claims that the blob was sent to retrieve a Time Lord, and he realizes who the second Doctor is. He views the breaking of the first law of time as further evidence of the Time Lord's attempts to kill him, and he orders them all to be taken away so he can consider their fate. In the cell, the two Doctors bicker again as the third Doctor blames the second Doctor for ruining his attempt to make peace with Omega. Jo and Benton interrupt and remind him that they are meant to be working together, and they apologize before discussing Omega's conflicting motivations of revenge and freedom from the antimatter universe. Tyler interrupts as he is confused as to what's going on, and after Jo's prompting, the second Doctor explains their current situation. He tells them that they are in proximity to a singularity, a point in space-time that can only exist within a black hole, and Omega is using it to attack their universe. They tell them of how Omega helped crack the secret of time travel, and his current mistaken belief of his betrayal by the Time Lords. Jo reminds him that Omega is not as all-powerful as he claims, otherwise he wouldn't have needed a Time Lord to help him. She asks if their sonic screwdriver can help get them out of the cell, but the third Doctor states that it will not work in the antimatter universe. She then suggests that their combined willpower might be able to manipulate their environment the same way that Omega's does. They establish their mental link again and manage to create a door in the wall and then make their way to the Singularity Chamber. They tell the others to stay behind, but they follow on after them instead. However, they are forced to take a detour as they are nearly caught by a patrolling bulbous creature. The two Doctors enter the Singularity Chamber, but they are caught by Omega. They once again give him the ultimatum of surrendering to the Time Lords, or they will use their newly established mental link to destroy him. Omega refuses their ultimatum, and then uses his own mental power to break their link and face the third Doctor in a mental duel in the dark side of his mind. Outside, Jo and Benton eventually manage to make their way to the main entrance where they find the Brigadier and Alice trying to get in. The quintet then flee the area as several of the bulbous creatures open fire and follow after them. Meanwhile, the Time Lord President informs the First Doctor that they are sending him into the black hole as well, as only the mental power of him and his two other selves can defeat Omega. In their mental duel, the Third Doctor wrestles with a gargoyle-like manifestation of Omega's dark side. They are evenly matched at first, but Omega gains the upper hand and begins to strangle the Third Doctor. Episode 4. The second Doctor calls out to Omega and says that if the Third Doctor dies, then he will never be able to get free from the antimatter universe. Omega releases the Third Doctor and warns him and the others not to defy him anymore, saying that Jo and the men have managed to escape. He confirms their theory that it is through sheer willpower that he is able to create anything, and the second Doctor annoys him by repeatedly asking him to create a replacement recorder. The Third Doctor intervenes, but the second Doctor whispers that he is deliberately provoking Omega to see the extent of his control on their surroundings, noting that the angrier he gets, the more his control slips. The Third Doctor warns him to be careful, and they go back to asking what Omega wants them to do. He reveals that without his will to maintain the singularity, the world he created and everything with it would be destroyed, and he would be trapped forever. He says that he intends for the Doctor to take his place so that he may escape. The two Doctors silently confer amongst themselves, and they agree to help him. He says that they will need to take off his armour and wear it themselves, as the power of the singularity has a minutely corrosive effect, but prolonged exposure makes it dangerous. They take off his helmet and are shocked to see that his corporeal form has completely disappeared. They tell him that the only reason he exists is because his willpower has kept him alive within his armour. Omega wails in despair at his predicament, and he violently declares that he will destroy everything as the chamber begins to shake. The two Doctors flee as the ancient Time Lord insanely repeats that he will destroy everything. They rush outside but find Bessie missing, and the second Doctor points out the tracks of the car are headed back to the unit HQ. Meanwhile, Jo and the others arrive back at the unit HQ, all the while being pursued by the bulbous creatures. They hurry inside but find the TARDIS locked, and the Brigadier angrily tells everyone to be quiet as he decides the best way to defend the base. Benton points out the sounds of explosions coming from outside, and Jo says that it must be the two Doctors, and they hurry to let them in. The second Doctor rushes to open the TARDIS, and everyone pours into it, with the Brigadier going last as he's confused to see the two versions of the Doctor together. They then reactivate the protective force field, unaware that Omega is watching them through a view screen as he declares that he will destroy their universe. The two doctors state that they are now besieged, and Benton urges them to do something to defeat Omega, pointing out that they should be twice as effective. The second doctor begins to explain just how powerful Omega is when an alarm comes from the power console and you see the first doctor appear on the view screen. He tells them that they need to hurry as his connection to them is growing weaker, and they quickly establish a mental link between the three of them. They decide on a course of action, and the first doctor breaks the connection to report back to the Time Lords. The other two doctors begin to strip the force field components from the power console, and Joe explains to the Brigadier who the first doctor is. The second doctor finds his recorder, but is despondent to see that it is part of the force field generator, and the third doctor impatiently says that he will get him another one as they need to use it for their plan. The third doctor then calls Omega and offers to give him the force field in exchange for him releasing his grip on the TARDIS's flight controls, assuring him that they do not intend to deceive him. Omega agrees, and before they use the TARDIS to go to his chamber, the third doctor tells everyone to do exactly as he tells them. The TARDIS lands in Omega's chamber, and the third doctor says that he can help get him free of the antimatter universe in exchange for letting the others go free back to their own universe. Omega states that he knows that they can't free him, but offers instead to let the others go and spare their universe if both doctors agree to stay in exile with him. The third doctor agrees, and when Jo objects, he reminds her of her agreement to do as he says. Reluctant to leave him as well, the Brigadier asks how they will get back, and the third doctor tells them that they will need to walk into the singularity. Tyler goes first after Alice refuses, but the Brigadier sends him through after they see Tyler successfully disappear. Benton goes next after saying Joe should go instead of him, but the Brigadier orders him through. Joe refuses to leave the third doctor, but he asks for her to trust him as she reluctantly goes through. The Brigadier then gives both doctors a sad salute before stepping through himself. Omega comes back and says that they are all trapped together, but the second doctor again claims that they can free him and offers him the force field generator. When Omega refuses, they try to mentally coerce him, but it fails, and he slaps to the ground. The second doctor tells his future self to run, and they both rush back into the TARDIS, and then the force field generator explodes in a dazzling flash of light. On the Time Lord planet, energy levels are restored as they see a new star appear in the black hole. Back in Unit HQ, the Brigadier, Benton, Joe, and Tyler reappear, with Alice reappearing back at the Wildlife Sanctuary. Joe laments the loss of the doctors, and the Brigadier expresses his admiration for both of them. Suddenly, the TARDIS appears, and both doctors tumble out and exchange joyful greetings with the others. They explain that due to the fact that the recorder fell into the force field generator, it wasn't converted to antimatter by Omega like they were. When it collided with the antimatter, it caused an implosion that converted the black hole into a supernova, but the second doctor again laments the loss of his instrument. They hear a voice from inside the TARDIS, and they see the first doctor on the view screen. The trio exchange congratulations, but the first doctor says that he and the second doctor need to go back to their own time streams, but smugly states that he worries for their futures without him. The second doctor departs and exchanges a teasing farewell with his future self. The Brigadier tells Benton that they will need to do a full stock take of the base, but doesn't give an answer when Benton asks how they will explain any disappearances. Tyler also departs, and after he leaves, the Doctor laments the fact that Omega is gone, but Joe reminds him that the universe was at stake. Suddenly, a new dematerialization circuit appears, and the Doctor reveals that his knowledge of the inner workings of the TARDIS has been restored. He then tells a worried Joe that he won't be able to leave for a while as he needs to build a new force field generator. Meanwhile, Alice returns home, and after being questioned by his wife as to his absence, he tells her that she wouldn't believe him and asks if dinner is ready. End of the story.
Very good, except it was supper. Still, very good.
Ah, well, goddamn it, like, they say supper. See, this is the thing now, right?
He missed dinner. Dinner is lunch. Supper is supper.
Yes, but see, all right, this is kind of weird, right? So my cousins would have their dinner, like, because they mostly grew up on the farm, they would have their dinner at 1 o'clock, like, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Whereas me, because my mom would work late, we would have our dinner at like 7. So 7, which is supper time for most people, is dinner for me. So that's why I equate the two things together.
Yeah, I'm just saying that in the episode.
Well, they're wrong, okay?
It was supper. Because she had said he missed his dinner, which to you and me means he missed his lunch.
He missed food, and he's now late for other food, and he's asking he is hungry. So, localization of dinner time terminology aside, we're going to go over to the trivia spot. So, as this is a very monumentous event within the history of the show that we both love, what
Yes.
trivia do you have for us on it?
Cool. So the air date for the story, 30th of December 1972 to 20th of January 1973. Writers are Bob Baker and Dave Martin, both of whom we have seen before. They previously worked together on The Claws of Axos and The Mutants. And we'll see their work together again in The Sontaran Experiment, The Hand of Fear, The Invisible Enemy, Underworld, The Armageddon Factor. And again, as said before, Bob also wrote Nightmare of Eden. The director of the story is Lenny Main. This is the second of 4 stories directed by Lenny. We previously saw his work in The Curse of Peladon, and we'll see his work again in The Monster of Peladon and then in The Hand of Fear.
So this is interesting because from our perspective, we have 2 writers whose work we considered meh, and a director whose work we loved.
Yes, so it'll be interesting to see how this balances out.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind, we have 2 writers whose work so far we
Yes.
consider meh. We do have a little bit of future knowledge.
Yes,
in that
I
sense.
know. Shh, don't tell anyone.
This story had the working title of The Black Hole. To the point, really.
Yeah.
And it was intended to commemorate the 10th anniversary of Doctor Who. This is the start of season 10.
Mm-hmm.
It was just intended to commemorate the 10th anniversary. The interesting thing, though, is that 10 years to the date would actually have been during the hiatus between seasons 10 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing this at the beginning of season 10.
Yeah.
So that kind of differs from the way that they do it now in the modern show, where they try to have it align much more with the actual anniversary date. But here it was just, season 10 is the 10th year. Let's do something big for the kickoff.
Well, see, in a sense, they managed to get away with it for the modern because obviously there was nothing on during the 40th. So then for the 50th, it was just an event.
Yeah.
It wasn't part of a regular season run.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very interesting to see what they do for the 60th.
Mm-hmm.
So this serial, like you said, big monumental event in terms of Doctor Who. Number of firsts. Our first multi-doctor story. Asterix, we did see in a story previously 2 versions of the same Doctor. This is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So first multi-doctor story, establishing the idea of the Doctor being able to meet and interact with his previous incarnations.
Yes.
Which we're told here breaks the first law of time.
Mm-hmm.
Note to future Doctors, apparently you're doing this all over the gaff, but however. It also marks the return of William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton to the roles of the first and second Doctor respectively for the first time. It's the first time both of those Doctors were seen on screen in colour. Now, an interesting thing is, I don't know about you, but when I was watching and we had the first Doctor interacting with the Time Lords, he was in black and white.
There was one scene there, yeah, where he's in... There's 1 or 2 scenes where he's in black and white.
It was just that one scene where it jumped out at me that he was in black and white. But I wonder if it was just that over the years, whatever.
I actually don't know because as the power drain goes on throughout the story, the lights and a lot of the colour fades from the time.
Oh, maybe that was it.
So that's maybe what it could be.
Maybe that was it. Because another thing is that this is actually the first story for either Doctor, the first or second, where the original recordings were preserved. Because all of the other ones, they were taken from telecasts, which are different versions of the tapes. It was actually the original recordings were preserved. This is the first time that the Brig and Benton enter the TARDIS. And it's the first time, apparently, that the phrase, "it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside," is uttered. And is the Doctor suggesting something that Benton should have said.
I love his... Like, John Levine sells that scene so well. He's just looking up the road. He's just like, seems kind of pointless, doesn't it?
So I mentioned last week that we got a new TARDIS last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave you the spoiler, it wasn't going to last for long. It did not see through to this week. That particular weird design that I didn't like, Barry Letts also didn't like it, lasted for 1 story, which was the end of season 9. The reason was that it got warped while in storage between seasons 9 and 10. So they had to redesign it again, and this was redesigned by Roger Liminton. And I'm glad, because I didn't like the one we saw last week. I thought it was a bit crap.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it.
The one thing I'd say on this one, though, is that the roof seems a bit low. Like, you can see the ceiling, and, like, the roundels obviously don't continue up, so it's just like, okay, maybe you should have raised that ever so slightly. So this is also the first appearance of Omega or Omega, depending on your pronunciation of that word. They say Omega.
Yeah.
Which seems weird in my head. Originally, his name was supposed to be Om, which is a flip of Who. So if you flip if you flip Who and turn it upside down,
but
it looks like Om, O-H-M.
Only if you capitalize it, though.
Yeah, it was designed to be done in capital letters.
Otherwise, it's whoa.
Om was later used as the name of an ancient Gallifreyan god, apparently, in a novel, The Infinity Doctors. Through this story, in a way, Patrick Troughton and William Hartnell also appear in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Because when there's flashbacks of Joe's time with the Doctor, it flashes back to this story. So they use footage from this in that episode of Sarah Jane Adventures, Death of the Doctor. So technically, they appeared of a sort.
This is like when Paul asked us the fucking question of which Doctors never encountered the Master, and we with confidence said 1 and 2, forgetting that they fucking met him in like the 5 Doctors special. Yeah. It's like, well, that's bollocks. That's cheating.
So here we get to see our Doctors interact for the most part, and we'll get to Bill's circumstance a little bit later. But Terrance Dicks was asked, how did Patrick and John get on? And his reply was, not at all. The two have had very different acting styles. Troughton was more a fan of ad-libbing, kind of goofing, you know, finding what fit naturally in the scene, whereas John was very much, this is the script. And apparently at one point, John questioned Patrick on one of his ad-libs, and Patrick just said, instead of worrying about what I'm going to say, worry about what you're going to say. However, I mean, it's a key thing. I can't remember. No, I know what it was. I was having a conversation with some of the guys from the Mission Log Patreon group today. We were talking about Stargate SG-1. And the episode Ergo.
Yes.
And how a lot of that was ad-libbed.
Well, that's the thing. Like Dom DeLuise, like who played Ergo, is a force of comedic nature. So, like having a plan around him, I can imagine would not work well. Yeah.
So one of the Pauls that interact with the Mission Log was saying that, like with some actors, it's very difficult to work with another actor if there's someone who ad-libs, because often actors will pick up on the last word of a sentence, and that's their cue, that's their trigger for what they're meant to do next. If that last word of the sentence never comes, it can kind of mess you up. And he was mentioning that like Robert Picardo kind of had issues with that, because that was kind of his way of doing things. So I imagine if that's the way John learned his lines, that would probably get quite frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, if you're expecting him to say something and he's saying something else. They apparently also quarreled because John had a habit of moving Omega slightly so he could get better camera angles for himself, which Patrick objected to because he thought that the camera should be focusing on the monster. Apparently, this did sort of, you know, resolve itself over time. It was a working issue, not a personality issue overall, and they actually became really good friends, and they'd sort of, you know, play up the rivalry at conventions and stuff. But it did mean that when they appeared in the 5 Doctors, Terrance deliberately wrote in the script that they didn't have a scene together until everyone came together at the end, which they were both kind of disappointed, because they were like, why don't we have any scenes together? You didn't work well together, you're not doing it. Which is kind of sad if you think about it.
It is, like, because you see them, like, you know, you footage and photos of them at conventions. Like, there's one there where, like, John is chasing Patrick around with a fucking pitcher of water, like.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, from a production standpoint, you know, me and Vicky, great friends, shouldn't RP together.
Yeah.
I imagine it's a bit like that.
Yeah.
And perhaps in that instance, Terrence was like, look, you guys get along great and that's fine. But we can't have your shenanigans on set, but it's just not going to work. You know? So Nicholas Courtney did some improvising on his own. So the Brigadier goes through a number of different places where he thinks the antimatter world actually is. He thinks that the Doctor has just somehow moved a room from Unit HQ to another part of the planet. And one of the places that he's suggested is Cromer, and that was improvised by Nick. He was just listing off places. And that's one that he picked. More improv. Seems a bit weird to hear the Doctor refer to Omega as a bloke.
Yeah.
That was Patrick riffing off John Levine's line earlier in the scene. The original script ended with the first mention of Metabilis. First mention of Metabilis 3, though originally it was scripted as 4. Because the Doctor was going to invite Joe on a trip to see the planet. And this would have set up the story arc that would weave its way through the season and actually into next season a little bit. Due to time constraints, though, the line was cut out. But Terrence does bring it back in the novelization. Terrence Dicks includes it back in there. So more people who were meant to be in the story but weren't. Jamie was meant to be there and have a bit of a romance with Joe.
Ooh.
But Fraser was busy with Emmerdale, and so his lines were given to Benton. And as cool as it would have been to see Jamie interacting with Joe, I kind of prefer that it was Benton who got to do all that.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do a romance with Joe for Benton, but I prefer that was Benton that got to have that experience. Personally speaking, nothing against Jamie as a character.
Now that you say it, like there's a great moment where like Benton is looking at the blob, and he's like there with a thing of chewing gum, and he just goes like, "Right, now you're not going to give me any trouble, are you?" I can actually see that being a Jamie line.
Yeah. Except Jamie wouldn't have been chewing gum and thrown the wrapper at it. Which...
No, pissed it off.
Another person considered to return was actually going to be Zoe. So again, to give the second Doctor a companion as such. But John apparently felt that there were too many returning characters and that would be distracting. Which, I guess, like, because the second Doctor already had that relationship with the Brig, and the second Doctor didn't really work very closely with Benton, but they can, make that association because Benton was in that serial.
Again, that's another really good moment where he's like, Corporal Benton, actually it's Sergeant Benton now, sir, and it's like a very nice moment between the two. If the story had been 6 episodes, having someone come back with Patrick would have been probably, but within 4, you're kind of pushing it.
Yeah. So on to the cast that we do have. Returning as the first Doctor, we have William Hartnell.
Yay.
This is his last appearance as the first Doctor, and as such, it is his only multi-Doctor outing. We've mentioned before that Bill had been suffering from, I'm going to try and pronounce it right, arteriosclerosis.
Yep, you got it in 1.
And it was having a massive debilitating effect on his life. And he was really going into decline at this point. It's well documented that his wife was very protective of him, understandably. And while Bill really wanted to be a part of it, she was the one who kind of pushed for the role to be less physically demanding out of concern for his health. So that's why it was limited to the pre-recorded appearances on the video screens. So he filmed them at Ealing, and he had cue cards to help him with his lines. And towards the end, you can see that he often looks to the right, which I'm guessing is where the cue cards were. He doesn't do it for the first few episodes, but I think in the last episode, he's possibly getting a bit tired. And you can see him kind of looking to the right a lot, although, maybe he's looking at something else. Bill passed away only 2 years after this went out.
There's, for the 40th anniversary, which was just, I think, a year or 2 before it actually, before the show entered the revival era, there was like some really good interviews done with guys like Barry Letts and Phil Pinchcliffe and Terrence Dix and a load of other people and cast and crew members. And Barry apparently Barry tells the story of that he called to he called you on the phone to Bill's house, and Bill apparently said, "Yeah, absolutely, I can't wait to do it. Let me know when you need me."
Mm.
So then Bill's wife later said, "You got him on a good day."
Yeah.
So like apparently it's like he was really because obviously there was the whole thing of the Billy flubs,
Mm.
messing up his lines. Apparently, it was also just affecting his memory in general. So she really, like, that's where, like, if she hadn't been around, it could have been a very different scenario. Like, and he could have rocked up and he could have had a much different experience. You know?
Yeah, and I love the fact that, like, obviously we don't know what their personal relationship was like, but I love the fact that she's so protective of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she didn't want to deny him the experience.
No.
Does she have that right? No, probably not. But that because again, and I do remember interviews with Barry where Barry was saying like she kind of came to him and was like, "Look, he would have agreed to anything. Like
Yeah.
he can't do it. He physically
Yeah.
can't do it. He can't be acting on set all day every day." And
Yeah.
I love the fact that they could have so easily just not had him be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And given what you and I have learned through watching his stories, how much he loved the character and how much he loved being on the show,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have broke his heart
Yeah.
if they did a multi-doctor story and didn't have him in it. So I'm so happy they found a way to make that work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even if he didn't get to be on set with everybody else or whatever, he still got to see it on telly, and the kids got to see it on telly and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like kudos to everyone involved in that aspect. Like kudos to his wife, especially for looking after him. Kudos to the fucking Barry and the lads for finding a way around it. And again, I suppose we'll get into when we talk about his performance, but kudos to the man himself.
Oh yeah. Patrick Troughton also returns.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first return of Patrick as the second Doctor, but it won't be the last. He will return again for the 5 Doctors and then the 2 Doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Tyler is played by Rex Robinson. This is the first of 3 Doctor Who acting credits for Rex. We'll see him again in The Monster of Peladon and The Hand of Fear, both of which were directed by Lenny, so very much a Lenny favourite there. His non-Who credits include Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, The Big Pull, Warship, Gems, 6 Days of Justice, and Z-Cars.
Ding.
Rex passed away in 2015. Oh my god, I can't pronounce it that way. Omega is played by Stephen Thorne. This is the second of 4 Doctor Who appearances for Stephen. We previously saw him as a Zal in The Demons, and we'll see him again in Frontier in Space and The Hand of Fear. He's also done a number of contributions to audio stories. And his non-Who credits include David Copperfield, Death of an Expert Witness, Maria Martin or Murder in Red Barn, Crossroads, and the TV movie version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where he provided the voice of Aslan.
Oh, that's kind of cool, because I recently watched a bit of the Tom Baker episode of that series.
I make the Tom Baker episode of that series.
Well, again, because like Tom Baker's in the silver chair because it was a TV series of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and the Silver Chair, I think. Oh, and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Yeah.
Stephen passed away back in 2019. An interesting thing as well is that this season 10 is available in that Blu-ray collection set.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they have this series that runs on the Blu-rays called Behind the Sofa.
Yeah.
And for this episode, there were 3 people whose association with Doctor Who I've forgotten who they were in context, and I apologize to those people for not remembering context. But then you also had John Levine, Katie Manning, and Richard Franklin. His name was. And so they're watching it. Richard Franklin's like, "I'm not in this, am I?" It's like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
Because the other thing is that this is the beginning of the phasing out of UNIT, really. Because the Doctor can go into space more, and this is kind of where it starts, because he gets that knowledge back, and the TARDIS is going to be fixed, and he's going to be popping off more.
Like we've got one, two, three. I think maybe like 4 or 5 unit stories left.
Yeah. There's not as many as your brain maybe thinks there are, because
Yeah,
there's a lot of off-world stuff.
because
But yeah.
like see, this is the thing. Like while we may have appearances by the Brigadier or Benton, they're not technically unit stories.
Yeah.
So we are now entering. Fuck it. We're entering the character discussion. I always like do. I always say like, yeah. We're now entering
Which Paul finds very funny, by the way.
Yeah. It's like, do you remember like for a while there was like this fascination with like splitting the last two or the last movie of a series into 2 separate films?
Yes.
I remember when Rogue One came out, Stephen Colbert said, "I can't wait to watch Rogue One Episode 2, Part 3." Oh.
I still like I'm going through a weird thing at the moment where I'm like documenting like, because I have my Doctor Who list of like all the Doctor Who TV shows, like TV episodes and books and whatever that I have. And then I got the notion just to do it for all of my books and
Yeah.
DVDs and Blu-rays as well. I'm regretting the decision massively, but I don't know. And so I was trying to make sure that when I have series of movies, that they're listed in the list in order. So I put like 1 dot space, 2 dot space. It's like 1 dot alien, 2 dot aliens, 3 dot alien cubed, and whatever. So I was going down through Star Wars. I was like, 1, The Phantom Menace. 2, Attack the Clones. 3, Revenge of the Sith. 3.9, Rogue One.
For fuck's sake.
Because it fits it fits perfectly. Like, I don't own Solo, so I don't have to worry about making that fit. But like, Rogue One has to come between the other two. Like,
it does, yeah, it does.
Anyway, so this is part 3 discussion, part 1 of the podcast.
Yes, so where we discuss the Doctor, or normally we discuss the Doctor, but we have 3 of them this time.
Yep.
We didn't know when we were well off with 1. We have the companions. This week are Joe, the Brigadier, Benton, and Tyler. And then finally we have the villain of the piece, which is Omega. So, I kind of want to go first, just for the first Doctor, because this immediately popped into my head when I finished it.
Yeah.
I apologize to everyone as I say this. He's been gone for such a long time, and hey la, Doc Bill is back.
I love him.
Yes.
So much. To be honest, I watched this because I got this box set when it came out. And it would have been, was it around Christmas last year?
Yep.
And I did a little bit of sneaky watch through, right? So I watched this. I watched the last episode, just because I wanted to see them. But since then, and like we'd kind of pretty much gotten through most of Bill by that point, if not all of it.
We had we finished him at Christmas.
Yeah, so we had finished Bill, and I watched this straight away.
Yeah,
I think that was why I watched it, because we had just finished Bill, and I'd gotten it, so I watched Bill straight away. Having gone so long without seeing him, I was so excited to watch this episode. Because I love him so much. And one of the things that I love is that, you know, we'll get to it when we talk about the second Doctor and the third Doctor, but there's a very sort of antagonistic, you know, sibling rivalry, one-upmanship between 2 and 3. But there's such a deferential way they both look to the first Doctor.
Which is weird, seeing how they're technically older than him.
Yeah, like he's the youngest of the 3 of them. But they just they just defer to him in such a way that I kind of like it, because like, you know, you wonder how much of that was them writing in, you know, just an overall deference to Bill. And then how much of it was just the Doctors, you know, honouring the man who started it all. Do you know, in that sense?
Yeah, because like when he says, "Oh, so you're my replacements," and you just see like there's a quick cut to the two of them, and like Patrick is smiling away, looking for like the nod of approval, and so like John is like resolution. He just goes a dandy and a clown, and you just see the two of them kind of look at each other.
Patrick looks so devastated.
Yeah.
It's like, but like, well,
Oh,
but like throughout the story, like they never bicker with him.
no.
There's none of that. It's very differential. I'm sure a lot of that was because they couldn't write that sort of back and forth with Bill not actively being there.
Yeah.
But I just love how differential everyone is to that first incarnation. I think it's fantastic. I think as Bill's last appearance, I think that's great.
Yeah.
And someone should have taken note of how people treat Bill.
Mm-hmm. Because obviously the first Doctor makes another appearance again in the Five Doctors.
Yes.
And no, I haven't watched that in a very, very long time. But I watched a fair few of his scenes from it. And now I had said before that I thought like David Bradley did a great version of William Hartnell in the docudrama, not too gone on the performance in Twice Upon a Time. In terms of portraying the first Doctor, I would say I think that Richard Herndl, who does the first Doctor in Five Doctors, actually gives a better portrayal of the character.
Yeah.
And like there's some really, really good moments in the Five Doctors with the first Doctor. So
yeah, I don't remember it that well either, but I do remember his performance was very good.
Yeah, but no, definitely this is how you for for anyone that is taking over the reins and attempts to bring in the first Doctor again, please do not make the same mistake that someone else made.
Yes.
I agree with everything you're saying there in terms of Bill, and like again, I think it cannot be understated enough just how good his performance is for his limitations.
Oh yeah,
he has not lost touch with the character one bit. It is like he has what is it? It's a 7-year gap or a 6-year gap.
But six and a bit, yeah.
6-year gap, and it's like he had never left the role. He slots back into it perfectly. The mannerisms are there. There's the bit there where he goes like he goes, "It's a time bridge. Now what's a bridge for? Eh?" And they go, "Crossing." Exactly. Now quit dilly-dallying and cross it. Like that. That's. It's so good.
It's so dark, but this is what I love is that like while they were obviously incredibly limited in what they could do with Bill, everything what they did with him was perfectly in character. Like that way of sort of guiding you to the right place, and then say, "Off you fucking go, you fucking idiot." But also taking all the credit at the end.
Oh, absolutely! Yeah, he goes like, "Now you know, it was naturally without me, I
would have been lost or whatever."
Yeah, I shudder to think what the future will hold, or something like that. And it's like,
but you could totally that is totally something he would have said to Ian and Barbara, or like even to Stephen, and like to anyone. You know, it's so Doc Bill.
And as well, like when he says like it's time to go back to their own time streams, he goes, now you and I, young man, to the second Doctor, who's technically again older, but he just looks younger. No, like to Bob and to David, like they wrote a great script for him for his limitations, and he fucking knocked the hell out of the role.
Like I said, in the last episode, you can kind of see him looking off to the side.
Yeah, and the squint. And
every now and again, the squint stuff. But it doesn't take for I just noticed it because I'm like, well, he was looking straight forward for most of it. Now he's still looking off that. But if you imagine the position that he's in some sort of vessel of some sort.
So he's trapped in a time eddy. And what I can imagine is like it's almost like something from Superman, you know, the Phantom Zone cube or something like that.
Yeah.
That's essentially what he's kind of in, which is really just like, I suppose, like a chair in a studio. But like that's the thing, like, you know, he's trapped in a time eddy, and he's also trapped in the black hole. So obviously, true, I suppose, just serendipity, it feeds into the performance.
Yeah. So like the fact that he's looking around, it kind of doesn't take from it that much. No. It's purely because we've discussed him so much that I even noticed it, to be honest.
Yeah. And like all together, like he's maybe 6 minutes of screen time in about in a 100-minute story. but it's fucking brilliant. It's so
It's
good.
fantastic.
It's so good.
Like I remember the first time I heard about this story. I hadn't seen it, but I'd heard about it,
Hmm.
and I think it was after watching the Five Doctors years ago
Hmm.
that I looked into the other ones, and I saw that Three Doctors was a thing, and that Bill, hadn't been well, and so they just sort of like added him in, whatever. And I kind of thought it was like, oh, should this maybe have been called the Two Doctors? Like he's not even really in it, but like it is definitely the Three Doctors, and the story couldn't happen
Hmm.
the way it does without all three of them. Like you couldn't take Doc Bill out of it
No,
and still have the story that we got. I don't think.
no, no. And like, it's yeah, it's just he brings just that lovely little mischievous flair to it, despite the fact he's not even being mischievous. He's just being himself. uh, I think we may have gushed.
We've gushed enough
Yeah,
about
we've
Bill.
gushed enough about the man. So how about we go on to the madness with a method behind it?
Come on, you go first.
Okay, it's true though, because like it's like okay. First things first. I love the relationship between the two, between himself and Pertwee.
Yeah.
It's like they play off each other so well. It's fantastic. Like how they're trying to explain to Joe, and he's just like, he's not one, he's not one of them, is he? He goes, no, he's not one of them. He's one of me. And they're like, no, 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 no. I hate to be contrarian, but I must insist, he's one of me. And like Joe goes like, we and was it third
I
doctor?
was like,
Wait, I am he, and he is me,
he's me, and we're all together.
Gookie Choo. That's a song by the Beatles. Oh, how does it go? And he starts to play it on the recorder, and it's just like your man just wants to slap him. He's like, I love his obsession with the recorder, because it's like we've seen him play the recorder so many
Mm.
times, and it's such a perfect thing for his character. Um, I love. No, this is my own read into the situation, but the
Mm.
reason for like their uh slight antagonism towards each other is that, given how the second doctor was forced to regenerate, he views Pertwee as a usurper. Meanwhile, Pertwee views him as the fucking idiot who got him into this mess in the first place.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, despite the fact that you're the same fucking person. um but like,
That's a good way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about it that way.
yeah,
That's a good way of looking at it.
and like he just riles him up so much. But and like I love seeing him fall back into the relationship with the Brigadier and Benton. It's great. I also like how he's with Joe. He goes, now you see, Joe, I may call you Joe, mayn't I?
Yeah.
He's really sweet with her, which is great, because
Yeah.
it reminds you how he was with Victoria.
Yeah, and like my thing with the second Doctor here is, again, I kind of ragged on the second Doctor a lot when we were reviewing his stories. There were
Hmm.
several
We
several
both did.
moments with him
We
that I was
both
very
did.
concerned about.
Yeah, we both
Yeah,
did.
we
Like, to be
both
fair.
did, and I'm so glad that the second Doctor we get here is all the best bits.
Yes, absolutely.
There's none of the just random sexism.
Hmm.
It's the one thing though that is very true to that second Doctor
Hmm.
is using people.
Yeah.
So, you had a big thing with the second Doctor using people and getting angry over things like that, and like
Mhm.
not telling the whole truth. And we see it here with the second Doctor, where he flips the coin
Yes.
and doesn't let him see what it was.
Yeah.
And then later on, when they're deciding who's going to go
To the singularity first.
to the singularity first,
The third Doctor
and he's
catches
like,
the
"Will
coin.
we flip?" And like the third Doctor's like, he catches like, "There's no point."
Yeah.
Knowing you're a fucking coward, you'd make me go first anyway.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that, because it kind of shows like the second Doctor wasn't all sunshine and roses.
No.
He did have a darker side to him.
Absolutely.
And he was also the one that we said showed more emotion and more fear. He had moments of being genuinely very afraid.
Oh yeah.
And so we kind of get to see that, which I quite like. It would have been very easy to just make him great. But I like
Yeah.
that they did give him a little bit of flaw in there. Also, I did not know before watching the story that he was the one who started Jelly Babies.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I was more distraught by the fact that he wears a blue shirt. It's amazing what you pick like because like obviously in black and white everything like anything that
Everything's grey.
yeah anything that isn't black like, is like either
Grey.
just yeah it's just white. God knows what it is. Um, but I agree like that it is all the best bits, but at the same time it's still staying true to the faults of the character.
Yeah. There's one thing that I might get to when I'm talking about the brig. I love how excited he is to see the Brigadier and how excited he is to see Benton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like how the brig treated him though. And I'll get to that more with the brig, I think.
Yeah.
But it was the one sort of it made sense
Mm-hmm.
and I understand it. I just didn't particularly enjoy it.
Yeah.
Part of his appearance was the brig being because the brig was kind of his companion in this story as such.
Yeah.
And I don't like how that played out for as long as it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, like I love the idea of like the brig saying like, "Oh, I said you were his assistant."
His what?
I love that the brig is kind of like, shit.
Yeah. Oh.
It would be really hard to explain.
But there's actually such great dialogue between the various versions of the Doctor, and he's just like, your effectiveness is now doubled. I think you mean halved, more like.
It's brilliant.
So speaking to the lad, the dandy, we've had the clown, now let's go on to the dandy.
He's so defensive of his identity.
Do you know what he reminds me of? It's like when you bring a girlfriend back and she takes a look at your teenage photos for the very first time, but they come to life, and he's like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, like, he's so defensive that he... if you imagine, right, so this is the first time that this has been done on Doctor Who. It's obviously been done several times since then.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time it was done. So if you put yourself in the Doctor's position, you are a person who, through natural causes or extreme situations, will eventually change your physical appearance and some of your mentalities and some of your personas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what carries true is that you are you.
Yeah.
To suddenly have this other you,
mm-hmm.
this past you that you've grown beyond, suddenly there again, and you're like, no, this is my time to be me.
Yeah.
You had your time to be you. This is my time to be me. So I kind of understand him being defensive, but like, he's very defensive of it.
But on the flip side of it, then when they actually work together, like after the three of them established a mental link, it's like it could work. They're all kind of they both light up and they both start getting to work, and I like seeing that as fun as the bickering is between John and Patrick. I like seeing the collaboration between the second and third Doctors.
The one thing I find interesting as well, like you're on that vein, is that like you kind of get the sense that he sees himself as superior.
Oh, completely.
To the second Doctor.
Oh, completely.
But then he still has that differential
thing to the
with
first.
the first.
Yeah.
Poor Doc Passer is stuck in the middle, kind of going like, what the hell?
Yeah, like, it's like
unloved middle child or something.
You can just like imagine like the three of them all getting together, and it's like he's quite the oaf, wouldn't you agree? And it's like going, I wouldn't fucking talk. You can just imagine like the first Doctor like saying that to him, just kind of subtly push him down.
But yeah, I think we have a lot of good third Doctor here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything beyond seeing how he would react to his previous self.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything new here.
There isn't, and like the one major point outside of, because see, a lot of it is him interacting with his previous self, and it's not like, obviously, look, not a bad thing. And we've said before, like, if the story is good, nothing new needs to come from the characters.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing that, again, like the thing that kind of is true is the Doctor's compassion.
Yes.
Well, for the most part, like Sea Devils, we're looking at you. Like at the end, he laments that, like, he struggles with the fact that in order for the universe to survive, one of his heroes had to die, and he had to be the one to do it. Yeah. In a way, it's like, I liken it to putting down like a rabid dog.
Mm.
in the sense of like, if you like you see if your pet gets rabies or something like that,
Yeah.
it's a threat, and
Yeah.
you have to put it down. And that's the way I liken it, because even Joe says, well, it was him or the universe, and he's like, I suppose you're right.
Yeah, I think that's the part of the Third Doctor that really does shine through
Hmm.
here, is that, once he realizes who's causing it,
Yeah,
there's that little bit of, like, I heard about you growing up.
yeah,
Like, you're, oh my god, like, you're the guy, like,
like
like, and
he
there's
is
such a great reverence there.
he's the Zephram Cochrane of
Yes.
of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, there is a very understandable reverence, there's a
Mm.
very understandable hero worship of a sense
Mhm.
in there. And yeah, I mean, his reaction at the end, the Sea Devils, like you said, is the
Yeah.
is the hangout of you clearly don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that here we get the same reaction that we would have seen in Silurians of
Yeah.
there should have been a better way.
Yeah. Because like at one point I was like, will we even have a villain this week? Because because like Omega is a very interesting character to discuss.
Yes,
I
he
was like,
is.
will we even have a villain? So, but I like that the whole thing that shines through, and also I do like at the very end he reassures Joe that he's not leaving just yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like that time in the back sauce where he was like, I could just go.
Yep. Or like like even if we go back to like Inferno, where he's
Yeah.
like, I shall miss you, my dear, and all, but like I won't miss this pompous, so all three guys did a really good job, I think.
Yes, it is.
Mm.
And I think it highlighted the best of all of them
Yeah,
with still remaining true and not being like a complete whitewash.
yeah. Like, it didn't. That's the thing. It didn't sugarcoat any of them,
No.
which is brilliant. And it's one of those things. What if, like,
Mm.
if Bill had been better,
Oh, that would
what
have been so amazing.
what could his story have, like, I can imagine him, like, so the way that we had, say, obviously, yeah, the brig is Doc, Pat's companion for this story. I can imagine the first Doctor taking Joe under his wing
Yeah.
for a bit, while maybe Tyler sticks with the third Doctor, something
Yeah.
like that.
I can see that happening.
Yeah, come with me, my child, type thing.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I also kind of want to see him with Benton.
Oh, yeah. I just have him call him Chatterton or something like that.
Yeah. I also would have loved to have seen Doc Bill with Omega.
Yes, and something like that type of an interaction kind of happens in the Five Doctors.
Yeah.
And it would have been great, because it would have been very akin to the first Doctor and Bennett from The Rescue.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would have been great.
Yeah.
But alas, but like what we got, we loved.
Yes, we did.
So on to the companions. Let's see if we love them. So first of all, we have Joe.
Again, we get to see the intelligence that Joe hides.
Yep, absolutely.
Stop hiding your intelligence, Joe.
Before we get into that aspect of it, I will say that this is this kind of constant story that comes from me when you hear the story for the dads and my early argument that Joe was that character, because she's fucking fine in this story, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, just because of her clothing and that's where I kind of got it from. But
yeah,
no, like as you say, like she's not dim by any stretch of the imagination.
I love her dedication to the Doctor, even if it gets her in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen this from Joe over and over again. She will not let that man go anywhere on his own.
Nope.
Even if it gets in trouble. I also I noticed this, like, on the antimatter planet, when they're running to Bessie or when they're running back to the unit HQ, I love how one of the guys is always holding her hand. Just for what we know of Katie, that's her, like, shocking vision. But it's also very sweet that one of them is always there supporting her, which I just think is very sweet.
Absolutely, no, it is, because again, it really drives home the point that the unit family is a real thing.
And it's not just the family, it's Tyler as well. It naturally flows from whoever's nearest her at the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Which obviously is the actors naturally
Yeah.
flow. But like in the story it flows really well that they all just, keeping a hold of her or whatever.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think was a little bit OTT,
Mm-hmm.
it's understandable in context, but it's a little bit OTT, is the way she clings to the doctor before going through the mist.
Yeah.
Just the exclamation that she has, she sounds like a toddler.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, it sounds like, when your child gets up from a nap and you have to go to the toilet and they don't want you going anywhere. Do you know?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
to put it in a very specific example.
Yeah.
And it's understandable in context. That could have done with a second take, I think, just to get the pitch of that down a little bit.
No. Yeah. You see, I suppose there's a lot going on in that scene that I really enjoy. And I think my enjoyment of that scene probably made me not pay attention to that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's just that it hit me and I was like, okay, fine. Like, it's understandable in context. I just think it could have been toned down just a smidge.
And like, it is great as well, like that she cares for the second Doctor just as much as she cares for the third Doctor.
Yeah, and I love that she sort of plays Mother Hen.
Yeah.
When the first Doctor isn't playing Mother Hen. Where she's like, will the two of you just stop? Like, because you imagine, like, she reveres the Doctor very much. She looks up to him, literally, and, in a metaphorical sense.
Yes.
And I imagine seeing him being so very childish with himself.
Yeah.
She's just like, who the fuck even are you, dude? Like, what the fuck? Like,
but
I love that was her idea to create the door.
Yeah, that's again, it's just Joe's intelligence. And that's the thing. The more she travels with the Doctor, the more attuned she becomes to the science that goes on throughout their adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. I think that's probably like the big difference between only having Liz for a year versus this now being Joe's third season. Is because she got to go off world and stuff, is that she's becoming more attuned to the Doctor. Not so much the Doctor as a person, but to him.
Yeah.
Like, Liz, obviously got to know the science behind him and, that kind of thing. And she kind of knew his quirks and stuff. But here we get to see that Joe really understands who the Doctor is. And can take what she knows about him and double it.
Yeah.
And apply it to, well, there's two of you, so get to it. Like,
I'm just thinking there, like, that we probably haven't seen this much of a character progression since probably Jamie. Because if you think back to all the various companions, like Ian and Barbara and Susan were, like, Ian was a scientist.
Yeah.
And Barbara was a history teacher, and there was an understanding that one of them would always have for what was going on. Vicky, supremely intelligent child from the future. Stephen had future knowledge and threw a fucking hissy fit when his future knowledge didn't apply. Dodo wasn't there for very long enough. Ben and Polly, while they were there for an extended period of time,
I don't think they had a journey.
I don't think they had a journey.
No.
Jamie, because he was there for, like, what we say, 20 of the 21 stories. He, while not to the, like, he was able to, like, do certain things and work certain things. And then, like, obviously Zoe came into the mix, and Zoe was, like, supercomputer human. Liz came in, and she's a very accomplished doctor and scientist, throughout very many things. So then in comes Joe. And we get to see Joe's character progression from the person that used the fire extinguisher because she's off fire, and then seems very, moon-eyed. Now we're actually getting to see someone that's like, oh, don't you mean this? Or is that what you mean, type thing.
Yeah. And, like, I think Jamie's probably the best example for her. Because Ian and Barbara, while we love them forever, don't really develop as people as much.
No.
And we said at the time, like, who they are at the start and who they are at the end is still who they are as individuals.
Yeah.
If you compare Ian and Barbara in the Daleks to Ian and Barbara in the Chase, there isn't really much of a difference.
Except Barbara picks up a stick and goes pew 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 pew.
Yeah. Other than that, right? Other than that, there isn't really much of a difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Jamie, like you said, because he was with the Doctor for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
looking at it, we saw his change over time. He became more comfortable with technology and so on. And I think with Jo, I'd like to think that a lot of this is Jo just coming out of her shell.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like she's she's an escapologist and she does all of these other like random things that she's interested in.
I think what she's doing is she's asserting the fact that she's a grown woman and not a child, as the way that she was treated earlier on.
Yeah, and maybe she hid behind that childish persona for a while. Do you know? Maybe it's kind of like a protective thing for herself. But we have gotten to see, and like particularly in the Time Monster, that like she can take care of business by herself.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know like, the whole time ram that we had last week? Like that was that was totally it. But yeah, I think she did really well in the story. There wasn't a whole lot for her in terms of progression, but this is something for the characters as a whole.
Yeah,
this wasn't about them.
No, it wasn't.
That wasn't the point of the story.
It was the event, and it was. Yeah. So, the Brigadier.
I love the Brigadier in everything.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'll be the first to admit he was a bit of a dick.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, dude.
For a lot of this.
Take a fucking chill pill. Like, I know your base is under attack, but my fucking God. I would argue you've nearly experienced worse.
Yeah, like, the way, like, the first part, he's so... it's kind of so funny. When he first meets the second Doctor, he's so like, oh, thank God, it's him back again. Mm-hmm. Not the one I've had to fucking deal with for the last 3 years. It's you back. Yeah. But like the fact that he like, the Brig is not that bullheaded.
No.
Do you know, it wouldn't have taken him that long to cop on to what was really happening. And the fact that he's like, oh, so this is what you're doing in here, this is what you're spending unit funds on. Like, he knows the TARDIS is bigger on the inside because he's seen the console outside of the TARDIS before.
Yeah.
Like, there's a few things there where I'm like, ye needed a foil, and I get that, but like, I think they held on to it for a little bit too long.
I'm like, man, with everything you've seen, you should surely, have some suspension of disbelief now at this stage.
Yeah, and like, what I don't like about it is that it kind of tarnishes his relationship with the second Doctor, because they had a really good, friendly, jovial relationship in both of the stories that they were in before. And here he's treating the second Doctor as if he's the third Doctor. And I don't like that.
No, and also he's very reactionary, and he takes a lot of it out on Benton.
Yeah.
Like, Benton's like a punching bag for him. And I don't like that. I really don't.
It's probably like the one big negative. And like, it doesn't last for the entire story. Do you know? Like, he's fine in episode 1 for the most part. I think it's episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Where they just have him being bullheaded for long. But then you get to episode 4. And I think it's when he meets up with Alice.
Yeah.
He takes charge of Alice. But like, he really sort of, he is still that man that we know and love. Leading from the front, taking charge, great dedication. Like, I love the fact that like when he gets locked in the TARDIS, he's like, I need to help my men. Yeah. Like, that's all he cares about. Is contacting his men and making sure they're okay. So like, they do still have the good bits about the Brigadier that I love. And how sweet he was, like, being the last to leave to give his salute and all that kind of stuff, which is, it's very him. Do you know?
Yeah.
He just stands there resolutely and just Dr. Tyler, Mr. Alice, Benton. He calls her Jo.
Yeah. That rung true to me straight away.
And I'm like, okay, you were a dick for like 2 episodes. I love you again. It was so sweet. And you kind of imagine that, like, when Jo steps through and then the Brigadier goes up the steps and he turns around and he gives the salute, I sort of imagine it in a way of him sort of being like, I'll take care of her for you type thing.
Yeah.
Do you know? Even though, like, earlier on in the episode, he had the, like, I don't know about you, Dr. Tyler, but you two are still members of UNIT.
Yeah.
Like, and Joe kind of tries to stand to attention in her huge fuck me boots, like.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it was just like that when he said Joe, and I was like, oh, it's so subtle, but it means so much.
Yeah. Like, did he call Liz Liz?
No, I
No,
don't think.
it was always
I don't think he ever called her Liz.
Miss Shaw. Yeah, I think it was always Miss Shaw.
Hmm.
So yeah, for him to call, which was never, which I never took as a direct, like, it was always a sort of, it was inappropriate to call her by her first name type thing, which I considered the same with Joe. Like, he'd probably see it as inappropriate for him to call her Joe in day-to-day life, because of his position in the hierarchy or whatever. But it's just so that he doesn't force her. He just holds out his hand to her and holds her hand. I'm like, oh, it's so. If he wasn't an asshole for 2 episodes, I would say that, like, it's one of my, like, it is probably one of my favorite moments of his.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's just so well done, and Nick just played it so subtly as well. You know, it's so good. And then of course he has his comments at the end.
Wonderful chap, both of them.
Yeah, which is just phenomenal. Like,
it is.
And then we have his right hand man.
You're a good man, Benton. Even when your superior acts like a dick, you remain calm and resolute and do what you need to get the job done.
Yeah. Also, military commander Benton.
Yeah, I like
Leading from the front there, learning from the best.
Absolutely. Running around, like, yeah, this thing. He runs around the entire complex and he fucking sets up the positions and he's stuck in, like, again. And because, like, he's not even wearing his combat fatigues. He's wearing his it's not his dress uniform, but, like, his office uniform essentially.
Yeah.
So, like, but, like, a uniform aside, and how good he looks in the uniform,
he does look very good in his uniform.
This is a great Benton story, because when he walks into the TARDIS, he's just, like, all over the place. His interaction with seeing the Second Doctor again was brilliant. His report, like, just like he's trying to apologize for the Brigadier's attitude by saying, "Oh, he's very stressed."
I love it. It's like he's taking his dad somewhere.
Yeah,
and he's like, oh.
There's also another thing, right? I don't know whether you noticed it, right? But at the very end, when he's saying about the thing, you're like, "Oh, well, sir, like, if something is lost, where will we say it's gone?" You know that it's like he's looking off. It's like he's looking off into the distance, because I have this thing is that if he tried to look at Nick, he would burst his ass laughing.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, it plays off as Benton going, "Don't make eye contact.
Yeah,
don't make eye contact. Just ask the question. Don't make eye contact. It was a bad question. I shouldn't have brought it up. Just moving on."
Yeah,
but, like, from John's perspective, it was clearly, don't make eye contact.
Yeah.
Don't make eye contact, or you'll bust your ass laughing.
And Nick's thing was like, "Come along, Benton." Now, I want to know if you got this read on us the same way that I did, okay? So, we said Tyler goes first, then Alice, and then Benton. But Benton stops and says, "Sorry, I think Miss Grant should go first." What was your view on that?
I would consider that Benton trying to be like the Brigadier. They don't know anything about this. It might be unstable. And if it fails, Joe should get back. Which is the way I read it from the Brigadier.
Cool.
Everyone save everyone else first.
All right, cool.
And I would see it as that way. Why did you pick it up differently?
I picked it up in the sense of, not in a sort of, like, oh, women first, but a sort of, Joe cannot go last because she will not leave him.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah.
I kind of saw it on 2 ways. Like, I saw it on the, military goes last. Civilians go first.
Yeah.
There's that. Because obviously, Alice was the first to be sent, even though he didn't go, and was Tyler the one first. But also, what if something goes wrong and they need us?
like see, yeah, because like again, like yeah, there is the military aspect of like civilians out first, but I just had this thing of like that Joe's not going to leave him, so the sooner
Mm.
Joe goes, the less difficult it will be to get her out as such.
Yeah, I think it could be either or a
Yeah.
combination of those two things. I do kind of like the idea of him him learning from the brig,
Oh,
and the brig always insisting that civilians will go first, and that
definitely.
he's the last man.
Yeah.
But I can totally see it from that
Yeah.
perspective as well. Like, given the fact that she was clinging to him.
Like, so I think for me it would be emotional priority first, then the military priority, and then the military side of things. But it works either way. Like, but
Yeah. And the thing is, I kind of imagine as well, like when the brig was like, Benton, hop it, like.
Yeah.
I kind of imagine that the brig kind of wanted to give Joe a moment to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Do you know, in privacy without everyone looking at her. Do you know? Which is sweet. I think both characters played that particular scene very well.
Yeah.
And obviously Benton is very supportive of Joe when they get back to the lab, and Joe has a little cry over the fact that the doctor didn't come back or whatever. I love Benton in this. I think we're talking about character progression in terms of Joe. Benton has also grown a lot as a character.
Oh, hugely.
And
absolutely.
I think the Benton we see here is a perfect continuation of the Benton we saw in the Time Monster, where he was kind of understanding in a layman's way what was happening, and here he's sort of taking everything in stride, accepting what's being presented to him, trying to help in whatever way he can. And it's sort of, it's the nice foil to the brig, who's so set in his ways that, like, unless he was there when the two doctors appeared, he wasn't. It was going to take a lot to convince him otherwise.
Yeah, and I think, and that's the reason. Like, I love Benton, is because, like, out of the 3 unit guys, himself and the brig have like the most character progression. They are the characters.
Yeah.
Whereas Yates just feels tacked on.
Yeah, and I'll discuss Yates a little bit in my overall, actually, when we get to it.
So we move on to Tyler.
You mean the kid in the candy store?
Yes.
That is Tyler.
Like, I think his main purpose is to serve as like the doubting Thomas who sees the miracle at the end. But I do like how he doesn't consider the doctor to be a crackpot.
Nope.
And I do like how he doesn't consider Joe to be an assistant.
No. He treats them both very well. I think he's a very good scientist. Who clearly is just dedicated. Like, the bit where the brig is sort of looking at him kind of going, I fucking beg your pardon. Like, make yourself at home, why don't you? Type thing is brilliant.
Yeah. Liberty Hall, Dr. Tyler, Liberty Hall.
But, he's a good scientist, but I think the one thing, and the story did need it, and he is the perfect character to do it, is it did need that little bit of internal antagonism of, well, fuck you, I'm off.
Yeah.
They didn't do it for very long, but I think had everyone been playing happy the whole time, it would have been a bit unrealistic. So to have him kind of be like, we need to escape, like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's A, very real, and B, I think you need it. I think if he had just gotten along with the Third Doctor, I don't think the character would have come across as real as he did.
Yeah, because, like, in a wibbly wobbly timey wimey way, I would consider him to be like the Scarman character, because as we said a few times before, we did Pyramids of Mars as a test run for the podcast.
We also both love Pyramids of Mars.
Yeah, we also love both Pyramids of Mars, and again, thanks for Norm and John for helping us out with it. So I like, that's the type of character that I consider him to be, is like the Scarman character, who's like, he's the scientist. He wants to know more, but at the same time, he can be seen as a small bit of a roadblock to the...
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Tyler and with Scarman as well, and we'll get to him again in a while, is he's a scientist for the love of science. he is not a mad scientist.
No, he's not.
There's no personal glory in there. It's none of that. It's science for the sake of science. But he's also a real dude who's like, they're weird blobby things
Mm-hmm.
who potentially want to kill us. Can we go now? Like, and Scarman has similar, human responses.
And even to a more current time, and I cannot wait to discuss him when that time comes around, Professor Jericho from the latest stories.
Jericho from the latest story, or even from the Yeti.
Oh, Travers.
Travers
yeah.
again would be a similar
Yeah.
character to that in my mind.
Yeah.
All around good scientist, and again, I love the fact that reaching out to take care of Joe, very nice, and he's just a kid in a candy store.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, like when he goes inside the TARDIS, he's kind of like, "This is awesome."
Yeah. And like he's a pure scientist as well, because he's not freaking out to his new location. He's working out the mathematical equations as to how he got there and exists in an antimatter universe.
Yeah.
So speaking of the person that brought all these characters together in a fashion, the villain of the piece, Omega. And I would say villain with an asterisk.
Yeah, I feel so sorry for him. Like, his screams of despair, a little OTT, just a smidgen. Maybe could have done with a second pass over that. But you feel it. Do you know? This is a guy who, from what we're told, like, it's not like he was exiled.
No.
Do you know? It's not like they punished him for anything. He just got left behind.
They thought he had died. That was it. And they couldn't find any trace of him. They assumed he was dead.
Yeah, so like he got left behind. And all that's kept him, and I love this about a character. All that's kept him alive is sheer force of will. And I love the fact that they took that idea and just like, the planet is there by his sheer force of will. He's one of the most powerful beings we've come across when you think about it in that respect.
Oh yeah.
And it's like he's drawing in power to escape from this hell that he's been in for thousands of years. And you're like, do you know, I don't blame you. I really don't. And like the fact that it took him so long to get someone in to help him, and at that point it's too late.
Yeah. And like, just I only really just thought of it right there now, but given the time of year that this is set, right? It's like it's not beyond the realms of fucking metaphor for like guys in Vietnam, or like or any like guys that were left behind and were prisoners or kept in fucking prisoner camps for years and assumed that they had just been forgotten by their government and all this type of stuff. And it's like they go back, and when they do, if they're lucky enough to go back to society, they're treated like, some people treat them as heroes, other people treat them like dirt. It's a really weird fucking thing. But but this is like, he bent all this to his will, but his isolation has made him insane.
Oh yeah.
And like Stephen Thorne, I said that Azal was a great character because just like his presence, his voice, the whole lot. Now the scream, I liked it. I didn't think it was that over the top, to be honest.
It's a little OTT. I think maybe a second pass, a second take may have been helpful.
Probably,
but it hit the note it needed to hit, though, in terms of emotionally.
Definitely. And Stephen Thorne does something that I believe very few people can actually do, which is when they're wearing a mask, to act through the mask, to actually make you see the emotions on this thing. Tom Hardy has done it in stuff like The Dark Knight Rises and Dunkirk. Karl Urban has done it in Dread, but for the full effect, you'd have to give it to Hugo Weaving and
in V for Vendetta.
But also I think James Purefoy was small bit because he was the original body for it. But yeah, no, it's a very tough thing to pull off, acting through a mask, and Stephen Thorne does it wonderfully. Because
it's so good.
You can see the full spectrum of emotions because like there's points where he's very magnanimous. He's like,
Hmm.
brother Time Lords, welcome, and you'll stay here with me forever type thing. And then like his rage and his fury and the mental battle, and it's done amazingly.
Mm. The
Uh,
mental battle was weird.
it really was.
I hadn't expected it to be a
A wrestling
battle
match, yeah, like a really slow motion wrestling match,
with like him having a weird Darth Vader face.
yeah, and still better than the Gorn fight. Absolutely, way better than the Gorn fight. um, but no, he played off John and Patrick amazingly.
Yeah.
Like, and I do like the fact that Patrick stood up for him in terms of like the camera positioning,
Mm.
because this, like, Omega's a great villain. He's
And
fantastic.
his mask thing is really cool.
It's a wonderful thing. Wonderful.
It's like some of the masks that we've seen on the show. They've been hit or miss.
Hmm.
That one's really good.
It
To the
really,
point where, like, I mean, obviously he can see out of it, but I imagine they put black over the eyes.
yeah.
Um,
I think there's I think at one point you might be able to see his eye when they're putting the helmet back on him after the siesta.
yeah, I think you can see it there, but like,
Yeah, it's just black mesh.
you would never. The reveal that he's gone.
Hmm.
Like the first time you see that,
Yeah.
you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And it does beg the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I was thinking about this, when I was thinking about, the third Doctor's compassion over what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there should have been another way.
Yeah.
Was there another way? You have here 3 powerful Time Lords.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy can bend this reality to his will. Could they not will him a body for his consciousness to go into?
If Omega had been sane, then quite possibly there could have been a workaround. But he is starting off at the base fact that the Time Lords betrayed him.
Mm.
So everything that they say that they can do to help him, he's not going to believe it.
Well, the fact that he's like, we'll give you your freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, they already showed that that they can impact the reality here as well. I just wonder, like, 'cause they kind of leave it open to that. Like, he can create anything. Could the 3 of them together have created a body?
Absolutely, quite possibly. But as I said, like, he's starting off with the base fact that he was betrayed. He has grown insane over time, and he is just, his despair is probably so much for him that he can't think logically, which is a very understandable mindset for a character in this scenario.
Yeah, I'm just surprised neither of the other 2 brought it up.
Maybe they just felt like that they couldn't get through to him. But again, I think it's, you'd love to have seen the first Doctor there.
Yeah.
Because 2 seems to have reverence for him, but seems to be operating on kind of, I suppose, my mindset, which is like that he's too far gone to save.
Yeah.
Whereas 3 is, well, like, if we try hard enough, we can save him. What would have 1's perspective on the whole scenario been?
Yeah.
But Omega is such a fascinating character that I really hope he's not gone fully.
No.
Because he is a representative of one thing that I love in Doctor Who. It's when the Doctor wins the day through sheer fucking luck.
Yeah.
Seeing the Doctor intelligent and MacGyvering his way out of stuff is great. But what adds a real punch to Doctor Who is the luck factor. We had it all the way back in the Web Planet with the Animus, when they just, luckily, Ian gets through and manages to fucking lob the MacGuffin at the Animus. But it's pure luck. We mentioned Pyramids of Mars. Luck will come into the factor there. Luck is, it really helps get across the villain that the villain is a terrifying entity.
Yeah. No, I think the luck factor here is high.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time I watched this, which would have been a year ago ish
Mhm.
now, I was like, the recorder's going to do something
Yeah.
because they mentioned it so
Mm.
much. It is sort of the
I'll buy
Chekhov's recorder in that context.
I'll buy you 10 recorders, 100, 1,000.
But yeah, I think that kind of makes sense as well. That like this is going to sound weird. Without all three of them together,
Yeah.
the other two had to rely on luck.
Yep. But like, you never know. Like maybe if the first one had been there, it could have just come down to fucking luck again. In the
Oh
end.
yeah, I'm just saying, just
Yeah.
fangirling over Bill a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, what a great character.
Yeah, Omega is one of those characters where I'm like, okay, this is a villain that you feel something for. Like you said, I completely understand you not like being like, is he a villain? He definitely is, but
Yeah.
wouldn't have always been. And you kind of want, like, I want to see his story.
Because I made an analogy last week about the Master and the Doctor being like Professor X and Magneto. I would argue that Omega is more of a Magneto than the Master is, because of the fact of like with Magneto's motivations for how he grew to hate humanity. Like, I mean, for fuck's sake, he's a Holocaust survivor, and when he finally found happiness, humans killed his wife because he was other, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like with Omega, it's like his actions are very understandable from the situation that he's coming from.
Very much so. Like, more so than I think any villain we've had to date. I'm trying to think of another villain that we've had that was as relatable or as understandable as Omega, and I'm drawing a blank.
I'm kind of drawing a blank as well because
That's not to say they weren't there. I can't think of them at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are again at the overall section where Trish and I will each give our scores out of 5. So would you like to go first?
I will. I loved it. I loved it.
Now, I have a question for you, okay?
Yeah.
Did you love the story as a whole, or did you just love the fact that we had Bill back?
Okay, so this story started out at a 5 because Bill was in it.
Right.
It was theirs to lose. Right? It started at a 5.0 because it had Bill.
Okay.
Right? It was theirs to lose from that point onwards.
Yeah.
But no, I actually really did love the story. I think it was a fantastic use of the past Doctors in a way that makes sense for how they would interact with each other. Yes, I love seeing Bill again, and I'm actually really sad this is the last time we're going to be talking about Bill Hartnell, because I really like, and it's through the podcast and through watching the episodes and discussing the characters, I love his Doctor. I love the portrayal that Bill brought to the character. We'll see the first Doctor again, but we're not going to see Bill. No. And like, for me, I think this story's going to hold a special place in my heart because of that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the story as a whole, though, it was fantastic use of all 3 Doctors. Each playing to their strengths, each showing the best of that Doctor while not shying away from the bad parts of them either.
No.
The villain was very interesting. Like, if we compare him to the Master, right? The Master, 9 times out of 10, has this convoluted scheme to have another species help him get power, and often ends up needing the Doctor to help him to run his scheme, which is like, so fucking weird. And here we have another Time Lord who doesn't need anybody else. His plan was to drain the Time Lords of their power, which he was doing, and kind of to find a friend, which he also did. He find someone to either replace him or to stay there with him.
Yeah, because like that was the whole thing, was that he said he compared himself to Atlas holding
Yeah,
up the world. So
yeah,
another Time Lord would have to take his place.
yeah. Which I find it interesting that he mentioned Atlas because he's
Mm-hmm.
with Kronos
Mm-hmm.
last week.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that like if you compare the two characters, the Master is great.
Yeah.
I think Omega is a more compelling villain,
Mm.
at least in this one story.
Yeah.
Than the Master has been up to now.
Mm.
Yeah, the Brig was a bit of a dick for 2 episodes, but he still had some fantastic moments.
Mm.
That moment when they're saying, I will, like, that is one of my favorite Nicholas Courtney moments.
Mm-hmm.
Good use of characters.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of going back to saying earlier. I'm kind of glad Jamie wasn't there. I'm glad Zoe wasn't there. And I'm really glad Yates wasn't there.
Mm.
No offense to Richard Franklin as an actor, this is not a story that Yates would have fit nicely into.
No.
Yates's function within UNIT is, it's kind of hard to define because he's not the everyman that Benton is,
No.
nor is he the stalwart leader that the Brig is. And we needed both of those in the story.
Yes.
Yates is this weird in between that I don't think would have added any value
No.
had he been here. Like if you'd taken out, I don't know, taken out Tyler and put in Yates, or taken out Ollis and put in Yates, I don't think his character would have added anything. Like you couldn't just swap him out, like swap Benton out for Yates.
No.
It wouldn't have worked.
There's only one character that you can swap Yates out for, and that's Corporal Palmer, who's leading
Yeah.
the unit troops outside after the base goes.
Yeah.
Like, I would like the only reason I'd like to see Jamie in this story is just so like the break I'm gonna go, Doctor McCrimmon.
Yeah.
just that whole side of things. But
that would have been nice.
yeah. But only if it's a longer story. I think
Yeah.
for what they did, 4 parts is perfect.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is that it doesn't overstay its welcome.
No, it doesn't.
You know, they could have very easily tried to go for the 6-parter. You know, it's an event.
Mm-hmm.
Go for the 6-parter, and they didn't. And I'm kind of glad they didn't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
You know, we've talked before about stories that don't waste an ounce of space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of them. It
Yeah.
is a story perfectly told in 4 parts.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with a 5. And it ended with a 5.
Cool.
Because even though the Brig was a bit of a dick,
Mm.
it wasn't enough for me to say I'm knocking points off.
Like that was my only complaint about this story as well. And like at one point, like my story was a 4.5, right? Because I was like, it seems so out of fucking character. Like it just like he should not be this bullheaded. He should not be this reactionary. Not for this long.
Yeah.
But I think, and it stayed at 4.5. But through our discussion in the character component side of things, I knocked it back up because I realized that I liked the positive sides of the Brig more than I disliked the negative side of things.
So what did you knock it back up to?
Let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
But this thing, right? With this story, we were given something that we never knew could happen, and that we also never knew that we wanted, and I loved it. Each of the 3 doctors performed brilliantly, and as I said, my hat is off to everyone that helped Bill Hartnell give this performance.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it's the last we're going to see of him. And given his health at the time, it could have been bad. It could have been a disaster. But my hat is off to the lads, and also his wife, for fucking standing firm and saying, no, if you want him in this is it, there's going to have to be major changes to the plan.
Yeah.
Because like if their relationship is anything to go by from the docudrama, she was very supportive of him, even though he could be very in his home life be very fucking curmudgeonly, but she's fucking stood by him, and she stood up to him at times as well, which is great. So yeah, kudos to them. Great performances by fucking all the cast as always. And Stephen Thorne did a great job with bringing the expressionless Omega to life. Yeah, so like I've given this a 5 as well because I loved it, and when I saw Bill come back into it, like I remember my first experience with the story, which is about 10 years ago, and like prior to watching it, I had seen the YouTube clips of the first Doctor. Little did I realize that those clips were the extent of his impact on the story. So at the time, I was a bit disappointed. Going through it, watching it now, after establishing my fondness of the first Doctor and moving him up my rankings of the Doctors, his contributions here are fucking spot on. He nailed the role again after being gone for nearly 6 years, and he just didn't miss a step. And his last role, I'm really, really happy that he did so well in his last role, the role that he brought to life and helped make a cultural phenomenon. So
very much so.
So for like the anniversary special, it's for me it's a 5 out of 5.
Yeah. So this would make John's one. Just gonna count.
I think he's got the most agreed upon 5s.
4. So he's on 4 5.0s.
Yeah.
From both of us.
Both of us.
But see now, this also gives Patrick an extra 5.0.
It also gives Bill an extra 5.0.
And it gives Bill an extra 5.0. So let's put Patrick on
3.
2, 3. Was Enemy of the World the only one we gave him a 5?
No,
before War Games. Before War Games.
Before War Games, yeah.
Okay, and it puts Bill on
3 as well.
3 as well.
It puts him on 4 because we had Edge, Aztecs,
Romans.
Yeah,
I know this.
Yeah, I gave him a few more 5s. I gave the Rescue and the Crusade a 5.
Why didn't I give those?
I think because we said it at the time that I think I gave it a small bit higher because of my love for that period in history.
Oh yeah.
And I think with the Rescue, I thought it was a perfectly paced 2-parter to introduce someone new.
Why did I give it 4.7? My memory isn't as good as yours. Remember my thoughts for me, Paddy.
I think it might be virtue of the fact that it was the first story after Susan, and there's not a whole. I think the focus on Susan's absence and of Vicky being welcomed in so much by Bill, I think.
I think that may have rubbed me wrong.
Yeah, it rubbed you wrong a small bit, just because of how fast it seemed to happen.
I think it was also I didn't like how Vicky treated Barbara.
Yeah, or because of what happened with Sandy. Yeah.
Yeah. She was trying to save your life, you ungrateful little shit.
But so we have another 5 on the table.
Yeah, and opening the season with a 5, season 10, you've got a lot to live up to.
The only way is down.
Hey, currently the season 10 average
is
5.0. It is theirs to, like I said, I sat down to watch this last night and I was like, it has Bill in it.
Yeah.
It's at a 5. It's theirs to lose. Usually I go in with no score in that mind. Last night I went with a 5. So
cool.
Season 10, it's a 5 and theirs to lose. So Paddy, what are we going to be talking about next week?
So next week we are going to possibly one of your least favorite places in the world, a carnival. We will be examining the Carnival of Monsters.
There better not be any clowns.
I don't know. Okay. There's a familiar face, but I don't think there's any clowns.
Cool. Just remember your team obligation to inform me in advance.
Yeah, if
there's going to be clowns.
Yeah. Might as well give you like a couple of years' notice. Greatest show in the galaxy. Clowns galore.
Cool. Well, guys, talk to you next time.
Bye.